There is a man being executed in Rome. He is old. His hands are the hands of someone who spent decades pulling nets through cold water before he ever touched anything else. His accent, even now, marks him as someone who does not belong in this city. He never quite belonged in this city, and yet here he is, at the center of the empire that runs the world, dying on a cross, but not the way they planned, according to the memory of the early church, confirmed early in the tradition that Peter died in Rome and preserved in fuller detail in the generations that followed. The man asked for something unusual. He asked to be crucified upside down, head toward the ground, feet in the air. He said he was not worthy to die the same way his Lord had died. They granted the request, and so he hangs there, inverted, in the most powerful city on earth, dying by the method reserved for the worst criminals, having chosen to make that death even more uncomfortable than it had to be. His name is Peter, and to understand why a fisherman from a small lake in Galilee ended up here, why he stayed when he could have left, why he died like this instead of dying in his bed, we have to go back a long way, back to the water, back to the nets, back to the morning a stranger walked up to the shore and said 2 words that changed everything. This is the complete story of Peter, the fisherman Jesus called the Rock. Chapter 1. The world he was born into. Bethsaida is not a place history pays attention to. It sits on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, which is not actually a sea. It is a lake, about 13 miles long, 8 miles wide, fresh water, fed by the Jordan River from the north, draining back into the Jordan at the south. The Romans called it Lake Tiberias. After the emperor, the locals had their own names for it, their own relationship with it, their own understanding of what it gave and what it took. Bethsaida means house of fishing. That tells you everything about what the town was built around and what the people in it were built around. Not temples, not markets, not the kind of civic architecture that empires put up to remind people who is in charge. Just the lake, and the work the lake required, and the generations of families who had organized their entire existence around that work. This, or somewhere very close to it, is where Simeon grew up. The Gospels place him and his brother Andrew here before they settled in Capernaum, a few miles west along the same shore. Not Peter. That name comes later, and it comes from someone else. At the beginning, he is Simeon, son of Jonah, a Jewish fisherman in a region that sits at the intersection of Jewish tradition and Greek influence and Roman occupation, where the boundaries between those things are blurrier than they are in Jerusalem, where people have been living next to each other long enough that the lines have softened without disappearing. Galilee of the nations. The old text called it, not quite one thing, not quite another, a border region in the fullest sense of the word. Simeon grows up in Bethsaida and eventually settles in Capernaum, a slightly larger fishing town a few miles to the west along the same shore. He has a brother named Andrew. He has a wife. He has a mother-in-law who lives with them, which tells us his household is the kind of extended, intergenerational arrangement that was simply the normal shape of life in that world. He has partners in the fishing business, men named James and John, sons of a man named Zebedee, which means the operation is large enough to require collaboration, large enough to have more than one boat. He is not desperately poor, but he is not on a path to anything beyond this. And it is important to understand what this means in the world he is living in, because the temptation is to read it as a small life, a limited life, a life waiting to be rescued by something larger. That reading is wrong, and it misses the cost of what comes later. Fishing on the Sea of Galilee in the 1st century is not romantic. It is not the image of peaceful water and quiet mornings that later generations would paint onto it. It is work. Hard, physical, relentless work. The nets are heavy when they are dry and heavier when they are full. The boats are wooden and require constant maintenance. The fish move at night, which means the fishermen move at night, which means the rhythms of the body are inverted from what seems natural. Sleeping in the heat of the day and working in the cold and dark of the night, when the nets have the best chance of returning something. The hands that come out of this work are not the hands of someone who sits and thinks. They are calloused and scarred and permanently shaped by the grip required to pull a loaded net through water. The smell of fish does not leave the clothes. It does not leave the skin. It becomes part of the person in a way that marks them to anyone who gets close enough. And layered over all of this is the political reality of occupation. Rome is everywhere in Galilee, in the way that all-encompassing power is everywhere. Not always visible, not always loud, but always present in the structure of things, in the taxes that must be paid, in the soldiers who pass through, in the awareness that the land and the lake and the fish and the labor all exist within layers of taxation and local administrative control that the Roman system imposed on provincial trade. Jewish fishermen on the Sea of Galilee are not slaves. But they are not free in the full sense of the word either. They exist in the middle space that empires create for people they find useful but do not consider important. Simeon knows all of this. He has never known anything different. He is a man of his hands and his instincts and his community. He is not educated in the way the religious establishment in Jerusalem would recognize as education. He has not sat at the feet of a rabbi in the formal sense. He knows the scriptures the way people know them when they have heard them read aloud in the synagogue since childhood. When the stories are part of the air of a place, rather than a curriculum to be studied. He knows how to read the water, how to read the weather, how to read the behavior of fish in different seasons and conditions. He knows things that matter in the world he is living in. He is also, by every account, the texts preserve, a man of immediate reaction, someone who responds before he has finished thinking, someone whose first instinct is always to act, to reach, to move toward or against whatever is in front of him. This is not a character flaw exactly. It is a temperament, a way of being in the world that has its own kind of courage and its own kind of danger, often at the same time. His brother Andrew is different, quieter, more deliberate, the kind of person who finds things and brings others to them rather than rushing toward everything himself. The two of them together form a kind of balance, though the texts are not particularly interested in Andrew beyond his role as the one who introduces his brother to the person who will change everything, because that is what is coming. Not yet, but it is coming. On the shore of this lake, in this town that history does not pay attention to, in a life organized entirely around nets and weather and the rhythms of water, a man named Simeon is living the life that was available to him and is not thinking about anything beyond it. He has a boat. He has a family. He has a partner in the business and a community and a place in the world. Modest but real. He has hands shaped by years of the same work. And one morning, the work produces nothing. The nets come up empty after a long night on the water. He brings the boat to shore, and he begins the work of washing the nets, which is what you do when the nets come up empty, because the nets still need to be ready for the next time, even when this time produced nothing. And there is a stranger on the shore. Chapter 2, Follow Me. The stranger on the shore is not a stranger to Simeon. That is the detail that changes everything about how we read this moment. And it is the detail that gets left out of most tellings of the story. The Gospel of Luke, which gives us the most complete account of what happens on the shore that morning, also gives us something that happened before it. Before the boat, before the nets, before the crowd pressing in on the water's edge. Jesus had been inside Simeon's house. He had healed Simeon's mother-in-law of a fever. Simeon had seen this. He had been present for it. He knew who this man was. At least in the way you know someone whose work you have witnessed, whose presence you have been in, whose effect on your household you cannot explain but cannot deny. When Jesus walks up to the shore that morning and asks to use Simeon's boat as a platform to speak to the crowd that is pressing in around him, Simeon says yes, not because he is a stranger being asked a favor, because he is a man who has already seen something he cannot fully account for and has not yet decided what to do with it. He pushes the boat out a little from the land. Jesus sits down and teaches the crowd from the water. And then, when the teaching is finished, Jesus says something that a professional fisherman should have every reason to dismiss. He tells Simeon to put out into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch. It is morning. The fish have not been running at night, which is when they are supposed to run. The nets are already washed, which means the work of the night is done and the assessment has been made. Simeon knows this lake. He has spent his life learning this lake. He knows where the fish go and when they go there and what the conditions mean and what they do not mean. And everything he knows tells him that this instruction makes no sense. He says as much. He says, "Master, we worked all night and caught nothing." And then he says something that is easy to read too quickly. He says, "But at your word I will let down the nets." This is not blind obedience. This is not the response of a man who has stopped thinking. This is the response of a man who has already seen something he cannot explain and has decided, in the particular way that people decide things when they are operating at the edge of their framework, to extend the benefit of the doubt one more time. It costs him something. It costs him the dignity of the expert being told by the non-expert to try the thing the expert already knows will not work. But he does it. The nets fill. Not a good catch. Not better than expected. The nets fill so completely that they begin to tear. Simeon signals to the other boat, to James and John, and they come and fill both boats until the boats begin to sink. This is more fish than the nets were designed to hold. This is more than a good morning on the water. This is something else entirely. And Simeon knows it in his body before he knows it in his mind. He falls to his knees in the boat. And what he says is not what you would expect from a man who has just witnessed something miraculous in his favor. He does not say thank you. He does not say this is amazing. He says, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." This response has puzzled readers for a long time, but it makes a kind of sense that goes deeper than the surface of the words. What Simeon is experiencing in this moment is not gratitude exactly, and it is not fear exactly, though it contains elements of both. It is the specific vertigo that comes when you are suddenly in the presence of something so far outside your categories that your categories stop working. When the gap between what you are and what you are standing next to becomes suddenly, viscerally clear. He is a fisherman. He smells like fish, and his hands are calloused, and he has spent his whole life becoming expert at one specific thing in one specific place, and that expertise has just been rendered irrelevant by a carpenter from Nazareth sitting in his boat. And something in him knows that this gap is not the kind that can be closed by effort or learning or time. It is a different kind of gap. "Depart from me." It is not a rejection. It is the honest response of someone who has just seen the distance and does not know what to do with it. Jesus does not depart. He says, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they bring the boats to shore, Simeon and Andrew and James and John leave everything and follow him. Everything. It is worth staying with that word, because the tendency is to read it as a spiritual metaphor, as a way of saying they committed themselves fully in some interior sense. But the text means it literally. They leave the boats, they leave the nets, they leave the catch, which is the largest catch any of them have probably ever seen, sitting in the boats getting heavier as the morning goes on. In the world of the first century, in the economy of a Galilean fishing community, the boat is not a tool that can be replaced next week. It represents years of accumulated work and investment. The nets represent the same. The business represents the livelihood not just of the men who leave it, but of the households connected to them, the families who depend on what the lake produces. To walk away from it is to walk away from the thing that defines you in the most practical and immediate sense. It is to become, overnight, someone without a trade, without an income, without the identity that the work had given you. And they do it. Andrew and Simeon do it. James and John do it. They pull the boats up on the shore and they walk away. The text does not give us the conversation between Simeon and his wife that evening, or the conversation with his mother-in-law, or the looks exchanged between neighbors who watched this happen and tried to make sense of what they saw. The text is not interested in those conversations, but they happened. The cost of the decision landed somewhere. It always does. What the text gives us is the decision itself, and the shape of the man who makes it. Because the thing about Simeon in this moment is that he does not fully understand what he is agreeing to. He cannot. He has seen one morning on the water and heard a few words and felt the vertigo of a gap he cannot close. And he is walking away from his boat. He is not making this decision from a position of complete information. He is making it from a position of incomplete information and overwhelming encounter, which is the only position the decision is ever available to be made from. From now on, you will be catching men. He does not know what that means yet. He will spend the next several years finding out, and the finding out will not be easy, and it will not be straightforward, and it will include moments that reveal things about him that he would rather not know about himself. But that is later. Right now, he is on the shore of a lake he has known his entire life. Walking away from a boat he has worked his entire adult life. Following someone he does not fully understand yet, because something in him cannot not follow. That is the best way to describe it. Not that following was the obvious choice, or the easy choice, or the choice that made sense from the outside, but that not following felt impossible in a way he could not have articulated if someone had asked him to explain it. He leaves the boat. He does not look back at it. Or if he does, the text does not tell us. What the text tells us is simply that he went, and that the person he is when he walks away from that boat is the same person he has always been. Impulsive and reactive and capable and uncertain, with calloused hands and a Galilean accent and a life that has just tilted on its axis in a direction he did not choose and cannot yet see the end of. His name is still Simeon, but that is about to change too. Chapter 3. You are Peter. Jesus looks at Simeon and gives him a new name. It happens earlier than most people realize. The Gospel of John places it at the very beginning of the story. Before the boat, before the nets, before the morning on the shore that we spent the last chapter with. Andrew finds his brother and brings him to Jesus. And the text says that Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas." Cephas is Aramaic. Peter is Greek. Both mean the same thing. Rock. No explanation is offered. No conditions are attached. No trial period. No probationary status. No moment where Simeon is told what he needs to do to earn this name or how long it will take or what the criteria are. Jesus looks at him, the way the text says Jesus looked at people, which is to say, with the particular quality of attention that saw something the person being looked at had not yet seen in themselves, and says, "You will be called Rock." Not "you are Rock." You will be called Rock. The future tense matters. It matters because it is honest about something that the present tense would not be. Simeon, standing there in the first moments of their acquaintance, is not Rock in any observable sense. He is impulsive and reactive and works with his hands and speaks with a regional accent that marks him as someone from the unfashionable north. There is nothing about him that suggests foundation. Permanence. The kind of solidity that the word rock carries in every language it appears in. But you will be called Cephas. The name is a prophecy before it is a description. It is a statement about a destination before it is a statement about a current location. And the distance between where Simeon is standing when he hears it and the person the name describes is the distance the entire rest of his life will be spent crossing. He does not know this yet. He receives the name the way you receive something whose full weight you cannot feel until you have been carrying it for a long time. He becomes Peter, which is what everyone calls him from this point forward. And the name fits in the way that a name always fits when it is used often enough. Through repetition and habit and the gradual way that language shapes identity. He answers to it. He introduces himself by it. It becomes his. But the question of whether he has become what it means is a different question entirely. The second time the name is given, or rather confirmed and expanded, happens much later in the story. Jesus and his disciples have traveled north to a region called Caesarea Philippi, which sits at the foot of a mountain and near a cave that the locals associate with the god Pan, a place heavy with the religious imagery of the surrounding culture. It is an unlikely setting for a conversation about identity, which may be exactly why Jesus chooses it. He asks his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They give him the answers that are circulating. John the Baptist. Some say Elijah, one of the prophets, the names of people whose significance is established, whose role in the story of God and Israel is known and understood. The disciples are reporting back what they have heard. The attempts of their contemporaries to fit this person into existing categories. Then Jesus makes the question personal. "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter answers, not after a pause for thought, not after looking around to see what the others will say. Peter answers the way Peter does everything. Immediately, from the gut, before the full weight of what he is saying has had time to settle. "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus says, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." The moment is extraordinary. Peter has just said the truest thing anyone in the story has said out loud, and Jesus has confirmed it. And the confirmation comes with the restatement of the name and the declaration that this person, this fisherman from Galilee, is the rock on which something permanent and indestructible will be built. It is the highest point Peter has reached in the story so far. And the next few verses contain the lowest, because immediately after this, Jesus begins to tell his disciples what is coming, that he must go to Jerusalem, that he will suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, that he will be killed, and that on the third day he will be raised. Peter takes him aside. This is a very Peter thing to do. The man who just declared Jesus to be the Son of the living God is now going to correct him. He is going to tell the Son of the living God that he has gotten this part wrong, that the plan needs adjustment, that suffering and death are not acceptable outcomes, and someone needs to say so. He says, "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." Jesus turns and says to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. Get behind me." Satan said to the same person, in the same conversation, "Within minutes of you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." This is the moment the careful reader has to stop and sit with, because it contains the whole problem of Peter in a single exchange. He is not performing when he makes the confession. The faith is real. The recognition is real. Something in him has genuinely seen something true about who Jesus is, and he has said it out loud without flinching. And then he tries to protect Jesus from the consequences of being who Jesus is. The failure is not the opposite of the faith. It grows out of the faith, which is what makes it so instructive. Peter loves Jesus. Peter believes Jesus is the Christ. And because he loves Jesus and believes Jesus is the Christ, he cannot accept the idea that the Christ would suffer and die. That does not fit the category. The Christ is supposed to win, to reign, to restore, to establish, not to be handed over to enemies and killed. Peter's faith is real, and his understanding of what that faith requires is wrong at the same time. He is not a hypocrite. He is not performing devotion he does not feel. He genuinely believes, and he genuinely misunderstands, and those two things are not in tension with each other. They are both true simultaneously, which is what makes the story of Peter so much more interesting than a simple story about a man who failed and was forgiven. He failed because he believed the wrong things about what faithfulness looked like. He thought strength meant preventing suffering. He thought loyalty meant keeping the people you love from harm. He thought the rock was supposed to be a wall, something that stops bad things from getting through. He had not yet understood that the rock might be something you build on after the bad things have already come. That foundation and protection are not the same thing. That the kind of strength a rock requires is not the strength that keeps the storm away, but the strength that remains when the storm has passed through. Jesus does not explain all of this to him. He says, "Get behind me," and the conversation moves on. And Peter carries both the confession and the rebuke forward together, which is where he will carry them for a long time. The name stays with him. Rock. Cephas. Peter. He answers to it. He introduces himself by it. He has been carrying it long enough now that it fits, in the surface way that names fit when you have been called by them for years. But underneath the surface, if you press on it, there is still the gap, still the distance between the person who bears the name and the person the name describes. He was called Rock before he knew what kind of strength a rock required, and for a long time, he thought he already knew. Chapter 4. The Inner Circle. There are moments that not everyone gets to see. In any significant life, in any significant movement, there is the public version of the story, and then there is what happens in the rooms where not everyone is invited. Jesus has 12 disciples, and within those 12, there are 3 who are brought into spaces the others are not brought into, shown things the others are not shown, asked to be present at moments the others are kept away from. Peter is one of the 3. James and John are the other 2. What they are given access to over the next 3 years is not a series of privileges. It is a series of things that are very difficult to witness and not know what to do with. And Peter, being Peter, consistently does not know what to do with them. The first time happens on a mountain. Jesus takes Peter and James and John up a high mountain, apart from the others. What happens there is described in language that strains at the edges of what language can hold. Jesus is transfigured before them. His face shines like the sun. His clothes become white as light, and 2 figures appear beside him, talking with him, and the disciples recognize them somehow as Moses and Elijah, the great lawgiver and the great prophet, standing alongside the person they have left their boats to follow. It is too much. It is too large. It is not the kind of thing a human being has a prepared response to. Peter speaks. Of course Peter speaks. He says, "Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah." The Gospel of Mark, traditionally understood to carry the memory of Peter's own testimony, adds a small note after this, for he did not know what to say. He did not know what to say, and so he said something. He proposed a construction project. He suggested making shelters, creating permanent structures, turning a moment of transcendence into something with a practical outcome. This is what Peter does when he does not know what to do. He reaches for action. He reaches for the thing that his hands know how to make. Before he finishes speaking, a bright cloud overshadows them, and a voice comes from inside it. "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to him. Not build for him. Not organize around him. Not make plans in response to him. Listen." The disciples fall on their faces. Jesus comes and touches them and tells them to rise and not be afraid. And when they look up, they see only Jesus, alone, and the mountain is just a mountain again. Being given more does not automatically produce more comprehension. It produces more weight, more responsibility, more material that has to be integrated into a framework that keeps proving inadequate to hold it. Peter is being shown, repeatedly and at close range, what Jesus is and what Jesus does. And repeatedly he reaches the limit of what he can process and falls back on what he knows how to do. The second moment comes in a house that smells of grief. A man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, comes to Jesus and falls at his feet. His daughter is dying. Jesus allows no one to follow him into the house except Peter and James and John and the girl's parents. Inside, people are weeping. Jesus says the child is not dead but sleeping. They laugh at him. He puts them all outside. And then, in the quiet of a room, Jesus takes the girl by the hand and says, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." She gets up and walks. He tells them to give her something to eat, which is the most human instruction in the scene. The detail that brings everything back down to the particular and the practical. Peter is in the room when it happens. He carries this memory alongside everything else he is carrying. The third moment comes in a garden at night, and it is the hardest of the three. By the time they reach Gethsemane, the evening has already been long and heavy. Jesus tells most of the disciples to sit and wait. He takes Peter and James and John further in, and then he says something to them he has not said before. Not with this particular quality of weight behind it. He says, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." He goes a little further and falls on his face and prays. Peter and James and John do not watch. They sleep. Jesus comes back and finds them sleeping and says to Peter specifically so, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" He wakes them and tells them to watch and pray. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He goes away again and prays again and comes back and finds them sleeping again. 3 times asked to watch. 3 times they failed. The structure is not accidental. 3 times in the garden. 3 times in the courtyard that is coming. The inner circle. Given access to the most intimate moments of the ministry. Falls asleep in the hour when presence is all that is asked of them. Peter does not know this yet. He thinks he is ready. He thinks the years of following and witnessing and believing have prepared him for whatever is coming. He is about to find out what he is actually made of. And he is about to find out in the worst possible way. In the worst possible moment. In the place where he was most confident he would not fail. Chapter 5. The Bravest Coward. There is a table, and there is a garden, and they are a few hours apart. What happens at the table and what happens in the garden, and what happens in the courtyard after the garden are 3 movements in the same night. And to understand what Peter does and why he does it, you have to hold all 3 together. You cannot take the courtyard out of context and call it cowardice. You cannot take the garden out of context and call it courage. The truth of the night is more complicated than either of those words. And it is more honest about what human beings are actually like under pressure than most tellings of the story are willing to be. The table comes first. It is the Passover meal. The night before the crucifixion. In an upper room in Jerusalem, 13 people around a table. Jesus and 12 disciples who have been following him for 3 years. Who have left their previous lives behind. Who have seen things they cannot fully explain and heard things they cannot fully categorize. Jesus says, during the meal, that one of them will betray him. And then he says something directly to Peter. He says, "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. When you have turned again, not if, when." Jesus is not warning Peter that betrayal is a possibility he should guard against. He is telling Peter, clearly and directly, that the failure is coming, that he has already prayed for Peter on the other side of the failure, and that there is a role waiting for Peter after it. The prayer has already been made. The turning back has already been anticipated. The strengthening of the brothers is already the destination. Peter does not hear it this way. He hears a challenge to his loyalty. And loyalty is something Peter knows about, something he has staked his identity on across 3 years of following. He says, "Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death." And Jesus says, "I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you have denied 3 times that you know me." Peter does not believe him. This is worth sitting with. Not because Peter is foolish or arrogant, but because the failure to believe Jesus in this moment is itself revealing. Peter's confidence in his own loyalty is not performance. It is genuine. He genuinely believes he is the kind of person who will not do the thing Jesus is describing. He has built an identity around being the one who speaks up, who steps forward, who does not back down. That man will not deny knowing Jesus 3 times in one night. He is certain of this. Then they go to the garden. While Jesus is still speaking after the 3rd return to find them sleeping, Judas arrives, and with him a large crowd, armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Judas walks up to Jesus and says, "Rabbi," and kisses him. And the men with him seize Jesus and hold him. And Peter moves. He does not freeze. He does not run. He reaches for a sword. His sword. Which means he came to the garden armed. Which means some part of him had already anticipated that the night might require this. And he swings it at the nearest person within reach. The nearest person is a servant of the high priest named Malchus. And the sword connects. And Malchus loses his right ear. This is not a wild swing in a panic. Cutting off an ear requires getting close enough to a person to do that. Requires committing to the action. Requires a kind of focused aggression that is different from general chaos. Peter is fighting, in the dark, outnumbered, against armed men who have the authority of the religious establishment behind them. Peter is the only person in the gospel account who draws a weapon and uses it. He is willing to die here. That is what the action means. He made a promise at the table and he is keeping it. In the only way he knows how to keep it. Jesus tells him to put the sword away. He reaches out and heals the ear of Malchus. And then he goes with the men who came to arrest him. Willingly, without resistance. Peter stands there with a sword he has been told to put away. In a garden full of people he cannot fight. Watching the person he was trying to protect walk away with the people he was trying to protect him from. This is the moment the night turns. Not the courtyard. Not the rooster. Here, in the garden, when the sword is put away and the crowd moves off with Jesus. Not because Peter is a coward, because the kind of courage he has brought to this moment, the courage of the sword and the forward motion and the willingness to fight, is not the kind of courage the moment requires, and he has no other kind available. The disciples flee. The text says it plainly. But Peter does not flee entirely. Not yet. He follows at a distance. This detail appears in multiple gospel accounts, and it is important precisely because it is neither fully brave nor fully cowardly. Peter does not go home. He follows, from far enough away to not be immediately identified, close enough to still see where they are taking Jesus. He follows to the courtyard of the high priest. It is cold. Someone has made a fire. People are standing around it, warming themselves. Peter joins them, standing at the fire, in the courtyard, in the dark, in the middle of the night, in the city where they have just arrested the man. He left everything to follow. He is trying to see what will happen. He is also, in the most honest reading of this moment, trying to figure out who he is now that the one thing he was prepared to do has been taken off the table. The sword is put away. The fight is over before it started, and he has nothing left to do, except stay, except watch, except hold on to whatever is left of the promise he made at the table. He does not know that what is left is not enough. He thinks the hard part is behind him. It is not behind him. It is standing next to him at the fire, about to speak. Chapter 6. The Fireside. The first person who speaks to him is a servant girl, not a soldier, not a priest, not one of the men who came to the garden with swords and clubs. A servant girl who works in the household, moving through the courtyard, noticing the people there, the way people notice strangers in spaces that are not meant for strangers. She looks at Peter in the firelight. She says this man also was with him. It is a simple statement. She is not accusing him of a crime. She is not threatening him. She is identifying him, connecting him to a person in the way that people connect faces to associations when they have seen those faces before. Peter says, "Woman, I do not know him." The words come out, not after a long deliberation, not after a visible internal struggle. The words come out the way words come out when fear moves faster than thought. When the body responds before the mind has finished forming its position. He says it, and it is said, and it is in the air of the courtyard, and it cannot be taken back. He moves away from the fire. He goes out to the gateway, putting some distance between himself and the woman and the words he has just said, as if physical distance from the spot where the words were spoken might create some distance from the fact of having spoken them. Someone else sees him. Another person in the courtyard. And this time it is not a question but a statement directed at the group. This man was with him. Peter denies it again. He says, "I am not." 2 denials now, faster than the first. The second one comes without the pause. The first one had, without even the slight hesitation of someone who has not yet committed to the direction they are moving. He is moving now. He has said the thing once, and the sky did not fall, and the soldiers did not turn, and the night did not end. And so he says it again. About an hour passes. An hour of standing in the courtyard, in the cold, near the fire, while whatever is happening inside the house continues to happen. An hour of holding himself together, of being present without being identified, of watching the night move forward without any way to influence where it is going. And then a third person speaks. This one makes a specific observation. He says certainly this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean. The accent, the way he speaks, the particular sounds of the region north of Jerusalem, the vowels and consonants that mark someone as not from here. The voice itself is the evidence. Peter cannot change his voice. He cannot change where he was born and what that did to the way he speaks. And now it is not one person. It is the group around him, pressing in. And Peter answers this differently than he answered the first 2 times. He begins to invoke a curse on himself. He swears. He calls down consequences on his own head if what he is saying is not true, which is the ancient way of making a denial as emphatic as language allows. He is not just denying anymore. He is performing denial, wrapping it in the formal structures of oath-making. I do not know the man. Not I do not know him. I do not know the man. The slight formality of it. The third-person distance of the man instead of him. As if Jesus has become someone Peter is not in relationship with. Someone to be referred to rather than spoken of, with the intimacy of a personal pronoun. And immediately, while the words are still forming their shape in the cold air of the courtyard, a rooster crows. This is the signal Jesus promised at the table. This is the sound that was supposed to mark the moment. The audible timestamp on the failure. Peter remembers. The text says it plainly, without drama, without elaboration, and Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. He remembers, and in the same moment that he remembers, something else happens. Luke tells us, and only Luke tells us this, that at that moment, Jesus is being led through the courtyard. He passes through, And as he passes through, their eyes meet. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. That is all the text gives us. 5 words. No adjective attached to the look. No description of what it contained. No editorial comment about what Jesus was communicating or what Peter understood him to be communicating. Just the turning and the looking. Luke does not tell us what was in that look. He tells us only 2 things about what happens after it. He tells us that Peter remembered the word of the Lord, and he tells us that Peter went outside and wept bitterly. Some things do not need to be explained to be understood. Peter understood that look before anyone else could have explained it to him. Whatever it contained, it was sufficient. It reached across the courtyard and through the noise of the night and the cold and the 3 denials still hanging in the air, and it found him. And he went outside and wept bitterly. The word bitterly is doing a great deal of work in that sentence. Not just wept. Bitterly, with the quality of tears that come from somewhere deeper than sadness. From the specific place where a person confronts the gap between who they believe themselves to be and who they have just proven themselves to be. He did not deny Jesus because his love was insufficient. He denied Jesus because fear moved faster than love. In the specific conditions of that courtyard, in that hour of the night, after the sword had been put away and the disciples had fled and the direction of everything had tilted in a way he had not prepared for. The love was real. The failure was real. Both things are true at the same time. He was called Rock before he knew what kind of strength a rock required. And now he knew, for the first time in his body rather than just in his mind, what kind of strength that name required. And he did not have it. Not yet. He goes outside, into the dark of the Jerusalem night, away from the fire in the courtyard in the place where the words were said. We are not told where he goes. We are not told who he speaks to, if anyone. We are not told what he does with himself in the hours between the courtyard and the morning. We are only told that he wept bitterly, and that the rooster had crowed, and that Jesus, being led somewhere through the night, had turned and looked at him. Chapter 7. The Longest Saturday. We are not told where Peter spends that Saturday. The text gives us nothing. No location. No companion. No action. The Gospels move from the courtyard and the weeping to the events of the crucifixion without pausing to tell us what Peter is doing while those events unfold. He is simply absent from the narrative in the way that people are absent when they have removed themselves from the situation. When the situation has become something they cannot be present for. We know he is not at the cross. The beloved disciple is there, standing with the women near the place of the crucifixion. Peter is not mentioned. Whatever he did with himself after the courtyard, it did not bring him to the hill outside the city, where the thing he could not prevent is happening in full view of anyone who cares to watch. Perhaps that is part of it. Perhaps being there, seeing it, would have required him to stand in the open and be identified as someone connected to the man being executed. And the courtyard has just demonstrated what happens when he is identified as that person. Or perhaps he simply cannot bring himself to go. We do not know. The text does not tell us. What the text gives us instead is the silence itself. And the silence is a kind of telling. Because Saturday is the day between. It is the day after the worst thing and before whatever comes next, which on Saturday morning is not yet known, not yet imaginable, not yet a category that exists. Saturday is the day when the crucifixion is the final fact and there is nothing on the other side of it. Peter is in that atmosphere, somewhere in Jerusalem on the Sabbath, the day of rest, the day when no work is done and no journeys are made, and the city settles into its weekly rhythm of prayer and stillness. And in that stillness, he is alone with what happened in the courtyard the night before. There is a distinction that matters here, between guilt and shame, and Saturday is where that distinction lives. Guilt says, I have done something wrong. It is oriented toward the action, toward the specific failure, toward the thing that happened that should not have happened. Guilt can be addressed. In principle, by addressing the action, by making it right, by apologizing, by repairing what was broken. It is painful, but it has a shape, and the shape points toward a possible response. Shame says something different. Shame says I am something wrong. It is not oriented toward the action, but toward the person who performed it. It does not say I did a bad thing. It says I am the kind of person who does bad things. And now I know it. And the version of myself that I had been living with was a fiction. And the truth of what I am has been demonstrated and cannot be taken back. Peter does not need to think his way into shame on Saturday. It is simply the air he is breathing. He has been called Rock. He has heard the name so many times over the past 3 years that it has become simply his name. He thinks of himself as Peter, the fisherman from Galilee who left his boat and followed, and became the one who said, "You are the Christ," at Caesarea Philippi, and who was told, "On this rock I will build my church." That is the person he has understood himself to be. And last night, in a courtyard, in the firelight, under the pressure of a servant girl's question and 2 more after it, that person was nowhere to be found. The person who showed up in the courtyard said, "I do not know the man," swore to it, called down consequences on himself to make the denial more convincing. Not, "I am afraid and I cannot admit to knowing him right now. I do not know the man." The full erasure, the complete severing. Saturday is the day Peter lives inside the knowledge that this is what he did. He cannot argue himself out of it. He cannot reframe it into something more forgivable. He can remember that he followed to the courtyard when the others fled. And perhaps that memory offers some small purchase. But it does not change what came after. He cannot explain away the words. He heard them leave his own mouth. He knows what they were. Peter had always been a man of movement, of reaching and jumping and acting before the thought was finished. In the 3 years of following, there was always something to do, always somewhere to go, always a next moment, pressing in behind the current one. Now there was only the Sabbath quiet of Jerusalem, only the day that does not move. There is one more thing to say about Saturday, and it is a small thing, but it matters. At some point during the day, Peter must confront a specific memory. Not the servant girl, not the courtyard, not the rooster. Earlier than that, the words Jesus said at the table, "When you have turned again, strengthen your brothers." He said it before the denial happened. He said it knowing the denial was coming. And he said it past the denial, through it, to the other side of it. As if the denial were not the end of the story, but a passage in the middle of it. He prayed for Peter. He said his faith would not finally fail. He gave him something to do on the other side of the failure. But on Saturday, the other side of the failure is not visible. On Saturday there is only the failure itself, filling the whole field of vision. And the words Jesus spoke at the table are a memory from a world that no longer exists the same way it existed when they were spoken. Jesus is dead. There is no other side to get to. Or so Saturday insists. Saturday is always wrong about this. But it takes the whole weight of Saturday to discover that. And the discovering cannot be rushed. And Peter has to live all the way through it before anything else becomes available. The day passes. The Sabbath ends. The stars come out. And with it, the last day he would spend not knowing what was on the other side. Chapter 8. And Peter. The message has 2 words that should not be there. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome come to the tomb in the early morning of the first day of the week, while it is still dark, carrying spices to anoint the body. This is the work of grief, the final practical act of love available to people who have lost someone and cannot change the fact of the loss, but can still do this one last thing with their hands. They find the stone rolled away. They go inside and find a young man sitting there, dressed in white, and they are alarmed. And he says to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. And then he gives them a message to carry back. He says, "Go. Tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." And Peter. 2 words added to a message that would have been complete without them. Tell his disciples would have covered everyone. Peter is in that group. He has been one of the 12 since the shore of the lake. But the message says, tell his disciples and Peter. Peter is named separately. Peter is pulled out of the group and identified by name, singled out for specific inclusion in a message that is already addressed to the group he belongs to. The last time Peter was identified specifically, it was by a servant girl in a courtyard saying this man also was with him. He was named then as someone connected to Jesus, and he denied the connection. He was identified, and he erased himself. Now he is named again, from the other direction this time, not by someone trying to place him in a category he wants to escape, but by a message from the other side of death itself, pulling him specifically by name into a sentence that did not have to contain him. Whoever sent that message knew something about where Peter was standing on the morning of the first day of the week. Not physically, not the street or the room, but the interior location, the specific coordinates of a man who has just lived through Saturday with the weight of the courtyard on top of him. The message does not address that weight directly. It does not say tell Peter that he is forgiven or tell Peter that it is all right. It just says his name. It includes him and Peter. When word reaches Peter and John, they run. John outruns Peter. He is younger, perhaps, or faster. He reaches the tomb first and stops at the entrance and bends down and looks in and sees the linen cloths lying there. But he does not go in. Peter arrives behind him, and Peter goes in. Of course he does. After everything, after the courtyard and Saturday and the weight of the denial, Peter arrives second at the tomb and enters first. He does not stand at the entrance calculating. He does not wait for someone to tell him it is safe or appropriate or allowed. He goes in the way he has always gone in, before the thought is finished, because that is the shape of him. He sees the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. He sees the specific arrangement of what has been left behind, the evidence of something that has no precedent, no category, no explanation that fits inside the world as he has understood it until this morning. The text says he sees these things, and he marvels. Not he understands. Not he believes immediately in the full sense of what has happened. He marvels, which is the response of someone who is in the presence of something real and cannot yet account for it. He is not the first to believe. He is the first to enter. That distinction matters because it is true to who Peter is at every stage of this story. He is not the most perceptive. He is not the one who processes things most quickly or most accurately. He is the one who moves, who steps into the spaces others hesitate at, who is already inside before the question of whether to go in has been fully resolved. He is being put back together, not by his own effort, not by the quality of his understanding or the force of his will to do better this time. He is being put back together by a message that said his name, by the specific and deliberate way that the morning has unfolded, pulling him forward by the same instincts that have always defined him, into a space where something true is waiting to be found. The message came with his name in it. And Peter. He was not forgotten. He was not excluded by what happened in the courtyard. He was not redefined permanently by the 3 denials and the rooster and the bitter weeping. The message that came from the other side of death called him by name and expected him to receive it, expected him to run toward it, expected him to go in. And he did. He always goes in. Chapter 9. The shore again. A few days later, Peter says the most ordinary thing he has said in weeks. I am going fishing. 6 other disciples are with him. Thomas, Nathanael, James, John, and 2 others, They have been in Jerusalem. They have seen the empty tomb. Some of them have seen the risen Jesus. They are not people who have lost their faith. They are people who do not yet know what to do with what their faith now contains. People living in the strange, suspended time after something so large has happened that ordinary life has not yet reorganized itself around it. And Peter, who was a fisherman before he was anything else, goes back to the lake. This is not abandonment. This is not a man walking away from the movement. This is a man doing the only thing available to him in a moment when the path forward has not yet become clear, returning to the rhythms that his hands know, to the work that does not require him to have answers, to the lake that was his whole world before the stranger walked up to the shore. They go out in the boat. They fish all night. They catch nothing. The nets come up empty. Just as they did on the morning everything changed. 3 years before. The same lake, the same darkness, the same long hours of work that produces nothing. And when morning comes, there is a figure standing on the shore. They do not recognize him. The man on the shore calls out to them. He asks if they have caught anything. They say no. He tells them to throw the net on the right side of the boat. They do it. The net fills immediately. They cannot haul it in because of the weight of the fish. And something in that fullness, in the impossible abundance of it, reaches back through 3 years of memory to a morning before any of this began, to a boat on this same lake, and a stranger's instruction to put out into the deep water and let down the nets. The same lake, the same inexplicable filling, the same voice from the shore that knows something about where the fish are that the fishermen do not. The disciple Jesus loved says, "It is the Lord." And Peter does not wait for the boat to reach the shore. He hears it is the Lord, and he puts on his outer garment, and he jumps into the water. There is another morning in this story when Peter got out of a boat on this same lake. That time, Jesus was walking toward him on the surface of the water, and Peter climbed over the side and walked too, for a few steps, until the wind made him look down and he began to sink. Jesus reached out a hand and caught him and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" That morning he needed to be caught. This morning he does not walk on the water. He swims through it. There is no miracle in the swimming. No supernatural suspension of the ordinary rules of how a body moves through water. There is just a man in the lake, moving as fast as he can toward the shore, because the boat is not moving fast enough and he cannot wait any longer. He has learned something since the walking. He has learned that the water does not need to hold him up for him to get to where he is going. He just needs to keep moving. When he gets to the shore, there is a fire. Not a lamp. Not a torch. A fire, with fish cooking on it and bread beside it. The Greek word the text uses for this fire is the same word used only one other time in the entire New Testament. The same word used for the fire in the courtyard of the high priest. The fire Peter stood beside when he said, "I do not know the man" 3 times. A charcoal fire. The smell of it reaches Peter before he is fully out of the water, and whether or not he consciously makes the connection in that moment, whether or not he recognizes the word his body is using to locate itself in the story. Something in him knows. The body keeps its own record. The body knows where it has stood before and what it said there. He stands on the shore of the lake he has known his whole life, next to a fire that smells exactly like the worst night of his life. And Jesus says, "Come and have breakfast." They eat together. No one asks who he is. They all know. And the text says that after breakfast, Jesus speaks to Peter. He does not say Peter. He does not say Cephas. He uses the name Peter had before he was given either of those names. He says Simon, son of John, the original name, the name before the new one, as if they are going back to the beginning, back to the moment before you will be called. Rock was spoken. To the person who stood on this shore with calloused hands and a boat and a life that was supposed to be enough, not to undo the name that came after. but to acknowledge that the person being addressed is the same person who stood on this shore before any of this began, and that the path forward starts from exactly where Simon, son of John, is actually standing, not where Peter the rock is supposed to be standing. He says, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." He asks again, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus says, "Tend my sheep." He asks a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And the text says Peter was grieved because Jesus asked him the third time. He was grieved. He knows why there are three questions. He is standing beside a charcoal fire, and someone he loves is asking him 3 times if he loves him back. And he knows. He knows about the other 3. He knows that this fire and that fire are connected, that the 3 times of this morning are in conversation with the 3 times of that night, that he is being given something he cannot earn, but is being asked to receive anyway. And the receiving is the hardest thing. Peter says, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." 3 questions, 3 answers, 3 commissions. Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep. At the Last Supper, Jesus told Peter that when he had turned again, he should strengthen his brothers. Peter did not understand it then. He thought the turning would never be necessary. But it was necessary. And it happened. And now he is on the other side of it, standing at a charcoal fire with 3 denials behind him and 3 commissions in front of him. The job and the failure are not separate things. The job is given at the place of the failure, on the shore by the fire, in the specific geography of where the brokenness happened and where the restoration is being offered. Not despite the 3 questions, but through them. Not pretending the 3 denials did not happen, but passing through them in the opposite direction. 1 answer at a time. And then Jesus says something else. He says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." The text adds a note. He said this to show by what kind of death he would glorify God. When you are old, you will stretch out your hands. Peter hears this standing on the shore of the lake where he grew up. In the morning light, with the smell of fish and bread and the charcoal fire still in the air around him. He is not old yet. The words are about a future he cannot see from here. But they are specific enough that they will come back to him in the months and years ahead. Whenever the path he is walking turns toward the thing the words were describing, he knows now where the path ends. He still has a choice about whether to walk it. Jesus says one more thing. He says, "Follow me." The same words. The same 2 words that were spoken on this shore before all of this began. Before the boat was left, and the nets were abandoned, and 3 years of everything that followed happened. Follow me. As if the invitation has been extended again from the beginning, in the same place, to the same person, with full knowledge of everything that happened in between. Peter stands on the shore of the lake he has known his whole life. The same water, the same smell, the same man. But something between them has passed through fire and come out the other side. And now there was a job. Feed the sheep. And there was a destination. A place he did not want to go. And both of those things, the job and the destination, were held in the same word. Follow. Chapter 10. The Waiting. The shore of Galilee is behind him now. The 3 questions and the 3 commissions and the 2 words, "Follow me," are what he carries back to Jerusalem. Not certainty exactly. Not the clean resolution of a man who has worked everything out and knows what comes next. But something more durable than certainty. A direction. A yob. and the knowledge that the person who gave him both knew exactly who he was giving them to. There are 50 days between the empty tomb and Pentecost. 50 days that most tellings of the story move through quickly. Because the empty tomb is dramatic, and Pentecost is dramatic, and the 50 days between them are, on the surface, less so. But those 50 days are where something essential happens to Peter. Something that does not announce itself with fire or wind or 3,000 people responding to a single speech. Something quieter. Something that goes against everything Peter is built for. He waits. The risen Jesus appears to the disciples across those weeks. Specific encounters that accumulate into a 40-day period of presence and teaching and preparation for what comes after. And after the 40 days, the ascension, Jesus lifted up, and a cloud taking him out of their sight. And 2 men in white standing there saying, "Why do you stand looking into heaven?" And the disciples returning to Jerusalem. And then they wait. 120 people, gathered in an upper room in Jerusalem. The 11 remaining disciples and the women and the brothers of Jesus and others who have been part of the movement. All of them together in one place, devoting themselves to prayer, waiting for what Jesus called the promise of the Father, the thing he told them not to leave Jerusalem without, the thing they cannot produce themselves and cannot make happen by effort or planning or any of the tools that human beings normally use to move things forward. They can only wait for it to come. For a man like Peter, this is not a small requirement. Everything about Peter's history in this story is the history of a man who acts, who reaches, who moves first and thinks second. He left the boat before he understood where he was going. He walked on the water before he understood what walking on water required. He drew the sword in the garden before he had assessed whether the sword was the appropriate response. He ran to the tomb before he had resolved what he expected to find there. He jumped out of the boat and swam to shore, because the boat was not moving fast enough. This is his shape. And now the specific instruction is, stay in Jerusalem and wait. But Peter does not wait entirely passively. In the early days of the gathering, before the 10 days of waiting that follow the ascension, Peter stands up in the middle of the disciples. This detail appears in the opening chapter of the book of Acts, and it is easy to read it as simply a procedural moment, a necessary piece of housekeeping before the real story begins. But it is more than that. Peter stands up and addresses the gathered community about Judas, about the vacancy left by his death, about the scripture that speaks to this situation, about the need to choose someone to take his place, to fill the apostolic number back to 12. This is the first public act of leadership Peter performs after the resurrection. Not a sermon, not a miracle, not a dramatic confrontation with authorities. He stands up in a room of people who are together and afraid and grieving and uncertain, and he does the thing that needs to be done to keep the community organized. And it matters because of where Peter is standing when he does it. He is standing in the room as a man who denied Jesus 3 times less than 2 months ago, who went out and wept bitterly in the Jerusalem night, who spent Saturday with nothing but the weight of those words and the long silence of a day that did not move. He has stood on the shore of the lake and answered 3 questions and received 3 commissions. He has been given a job and told about a destination, and now he stands up and leads. Not with the bravado he brought to the table when he said, "I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." Not with the forward aggression he brought to the garden with a sword in his hand. With something quieter and more considered. Something that simply identifies what the community needs and moves toward it. This is new. This is not the Peter of the first 3 years. Something has changed in the shape of the impulsiveness, in the quality of the reaching. It is still Peter. Still recognizable. Still the person who moves when others hesitate. But it is moving from a different place now. From a place that has been broken open and is still in the process of finding its new shape. The community chooses Matthias. The number is restored to 12. And then the 10 days of waiting begin. The text tells us almost nothing about what those 10 days look like from the inside. It says they were devoting themselves to prayer. which tells us about the activity, but not about the experience of it. We do not know what Peter prays during those 10 days. We do not know whether the waiting feels long or short, whether there are hours of clarity and hours of doubt, whether the memory of the charcoal fire on the shore comes back in the quiet, the way memories come back in quiet. He stays. The text gives us that. He stays in Jerusalem as he was instructed to stay. He gathers with the others as he was instructed to gather. He prays. He waits. He does not rush ahead of the timing or try to produce by his own effort the thing that can only be received. This is a form of strength that looks nothing like the strength Peter brought to the garden with a sword. It does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It requires the particular discipline of remaining present in uncertainty without trying to resolve the uncertainty on your own timetable. He is learning this, in the slow way that the deepest things are learned, not by being told them, but by living through the conditions that make them necessary. The 10th day comes. The sound begins. And Peter stands up. Chapter 11, The Day of Fire. It begins with sound. Not with a vision, not with a figure appearing in the room, not with a voice giving instructions that can be followed or resisted. With sound, a sound like a mighty rushing wind, filling the entire house where they are sitting. A sound that has no source in the physical atmosphere of the morning, no weather event outside the windows to account for it. Just the sound itself, arriving and filling every space the room contains. And then fire. Divided tongues, the text says, like fire, appearing and resting on each of them, on each person in the room, not on Peter alone, not on the Iligen, not on the recognized leaders of the movement, on each of them, 120 people in an upper room in Jerusalem on the morning of the Feast of Pentecost, and what comes rests on every one of them without distinction, and they begin to speak in other languages, as the Spirit gives them utterance. Outside in the city, the streets are full. Pentecost has drawn people from across the known world. Jewish pilgrims who have made the journey to Jerusalem for the feast, representing every region where Jewish communities exist. Parthians and Medes and Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, visitors from Rome, Cretans and Arabians, every language of the diaspora, every accent of the scattered people, gathered into this city on this morning. And they hear, each of them, in their own language, the mighty works of God being declared. They are bewildered. They ask each other, what does this mean? And some say that these people have simply had too much to drink. It is an easier explanation. It requires less of the person offering it. Peter stands up. Let that land before moving past it. The person standing up in front of this crowd, in this city, on this morning, is the same person who stood at a fire in a courtyard in this same city a matter of weeks ago and said, I do not know the man, when a servant girl identified him as one of Jesus' followers. The same voice that denied Jesus 3 times. The Galilean accent that gave him away in the courtyard and could not be hidden no matter how hard he tried, is now the voice that rises above the crowd. He says these people are not drunk. It is 9 in the morning. There is something almost wry about that. The practical observation, the simple logic of it, the fisherman's directness cutting through the easy dismissal before it can take hold. Not a theological argument. Just it is 9 in the morning. People do not get drunk at 9 in the morning. And then he preaches. He does not preach the way a trained rabbi would preach, with the careful construction of argument and counter-argument, with the formal structure of years of formal education in the texts. He preaches the way a person preaches when they have seen something with their own eyes and cannot not tell people about it. He moves through the Psalms and the prophet Joel, finding in the ancient texts the shape of what is happening right now, the connection between what was written and what they are all standing inside of. He says, "Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works, and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst. As you yourselves know, this Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. God raised him up, loosing the pangs of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. He is not reading from a scroll. He is not delivering a prepared lecture. He is saying what he has seen. He was there on the mountain. He was there in the house of Jairus. He was there in the garden and the courtyard, and at the tomb in the early morning. He was there on the shore of the Sea of Galilee on the morning of the charcoal fire, and the 3 questions and the 3 commissions. He is a witness in the most literal sense of the word. Someone who was present for the events being described. Someone who can say, "I was there. I saw this. I know this to be true because I was standing close enough to touch it." This is what the early community meant by apostle, not an administrator, not an authority figure in the institutional sense. An apostle is someone sent, and the ones sent first are sent because they have seen. They carry the testimony of presence. They can say not "I have been told" or "I have studied" or "I have reasoned my way to this conclusion," but "I was there." Peter was there. The crowd listens, and when he has finished, they are cut to the heart. They ask, "Brothers, what shall we do?" Peter says, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promise is for you and for your children and for all who are far off, everyone whom the Lord our God calls to himself." For all who are far off. Even at the beginning, in the first public speech of the movement, Peter says something that will take him years to fully understand and live out. The promise is not only for the people in this street. It is for everyone whom the Lord calls, which is a category whose full extent Peter has not yet mapped and will spend years discovering. But he says it. And the text tells us that about 3,000 people are baptized that day. 3,000 in a single day, in a city that crucified Jesus weeks ago, in a street where the crowd's first response was to suggest that these people were drunk, and it begins with a Galilean accent. The accent that gave Peter away in the courtyard, the thing he could not change or hide, the regional marker that identified him as someone from the wrong part of the country. From the Lake District in the north, where the fishing boats smell like fish and nobody important comes from, that accent is the voice of the first public proclamation of the movement. The thing that was used to identify him as a threat in the courtyard is the thing that carries the message in the street. He is not a different person standing in the street than he was standing at the fire. The accent is the same. The impulsiveness is the same. The quality of moving toward rather than away, of speaking before the full calculation is complete. What is different is what he is moving toward and why. At the fire, he was moving away from something, trying to create distance between himself and the association that the servant girl had identified. In the street, he is moving toward something, and the movement is not about protecting himself. He is not the subject of the story he is telling. He is the witness to it. That is the difference, and it makes all the difference. Chapter 12. Before the council. There is a man at the gate. He has been there every day for as long as anyone can remember. Carried there each morning by people who do the carrying because it is what you do for someone who cannot carry himself. Set down at the entrance to the temple called Beautiful Gate, the gate through which worshippers pass on their way in to pray. He asks for money. This is how he survives in a world that does not have a place for someone who has never walked, who was born into this limitation and has never known anything different. He is more than 40 years old and he has never stood on his own feet. Peter and John are going to the temple for the afternoon prayer. This is not an unusual day, not a day set apart for something special, just an afternoon in Jerusalem in the weeks after Pentecost. With the community growing and the disciples moving through the rhythms of Jewish life as they always have, the man at the gate asks them for money. Peter looks at him. Not a glance. Not the particular form of not seeing that people develop around those who ask for things in public spaces. Peter looks at him, and then he says, "Look at us." The man looks, expecting to receive something. Peter says, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk." And he takes him by the right hand and raises him up. Peter does not say the words and then wait to see if something happens before committing to the next action. He says the words and takes the man by the hand and raises him up. In the same movement, before the outcome is established. The reaching and the lifting are part of the same gesture as the speaking. He acts into the space where the action has not yet been confirmed to be possible. The man's feet and ankles are made strong. He leaps up. He walks. He enters the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. And the people who see him are filled with wonder and amazement, because they know this man. They have seen him at Beautiful Gate every day. They know who he is and what he has always been unable to do. And now he is doing it. Silver and gold I do not have. This is the precise truth of Peter's situation in these early weeks of the movement. He has no institutional resources, no financial backing, no political protection, no formal authority recognized by the structures that govern religious and civic life in Jerusalem. He is a fisherman from Galilee who has been in the city for a matter of weeks, leading a community that the established religious authorities have already decided is a problem. What he has is a name. The name of the man he denied in this same city not long ago. And he is using that name in public, in the temple courts, in full view of everyone, because the man at the gate needed something and the only thing Peter had to give was the name. The crowd gathers. Peter speaks to them in Solomon's porch, explaining what has happened, who Jesus was, what his death and resurrection mean, calling them to repentance and faith. The speech is interrupted. The priests and the captain of the temple and the Sadducees come. They are greatly annoyed. The text says, which is a restrained way of describing the response of an established religious institution to someone speaking publicly in its premises about things it has decided are dangerous. They arrest Peter and John. It is already evening, so they put them in custody until the next day. But many of those who heard the word believed, and the number of the men came to about 5,000. The next morning, the rulers and elders and scribes gather in Jerusalem, along with the high priest and his family, a significant assembly of religious authority in one room. They bring Peter and John out and stand them in the middle and ask, "By what power or by what name did you do this?" This room, it is worth understanding what this room is and who is in it. This is the kind of gathering that condemned Jesus. The high priestly family represented here is the family of Caiaphas, in whose courtyard the interrogation happened, in whose courtyard Peter stood at the fire and said, "I do not know the man." These are not strangers. These are the institutional center of the authority that has already demonstrated what it does to people who challenge it. And Peter says, "Rulers of the people and elders, if we are being examined today concerning a good deed done to a crippled man, by what means this man has been healed, let it be known to all of you and to all the people of Israel that it is by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead. By him this man is standing before you well. Whom you crucified." He says it to their faces, not carefully worded to avoid the direct accusation, not softened for the sake of the audience, not adjusted for the political reality of standing in front of the people who have the power to do to him what they did to Jesus. The text tells us that when the council saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated, common men, they were astonished. Uneducated, common. These are the assessments of people who measure significance by formal credentials, by the institutional pathways through which authority is normally established and recognized. Peter has none of those credentials. He is a fisherman from Galilee. His hands show it. His accent confirms it. He is standing in front of the highest religious authority in Jerusalem with nothing behind him except the name he is speaking and the man who is standing beside him. Healed, which is its own kind of argument. They cannot deny the healing. The man is right there. They know who he was. He is standing on feet that have never stood before. And there is no version of this situation in which they can explain that away. They send Peter and John out of the room and confer. They say, "What shall we do with these men?" For that a notable sign has been performed through them is evident to all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and we cannot deny it. But in order that it may spread no further among the people, let us warn them to speak no more to anyone in this name. They bring them back in. They charge them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. Peter and John answer, "Whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must judge. For we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard." This is the sentence that contains the whole of the change that has happened in Peter since the courtyard. Not a dramatic announcement of transformation. Not a speech about who he used to be and who he is now. Just a simple statement of the constraint he is operating under. He cannot not speak. The thing he has seen and heard is too real and too large to be contained by a warning from a council. However powerful that council is, however clearly it has demonstrated what it does to people, it finds inconvenient. He cannot but speak. At the fire in the courtyard, he could not speak. The fear was faster than the commitment, and the words that came out were the wrong words, and he went outside and wept bitterly. And now, in front of the same institutional authority that generated the same fear. Standing in a room that represents everything that made the courtyard dangerous. Peter says we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. The council threatens them further and lets them go. They cannot figure out how to punish them without turning the crowd against them. Because everyone is glorifying God for what happened to the man at the gate. So they threaten and release. And Peter and John go back to their own people. This is not the last confrontation. They are arrested again. An angel opens the prison doors. They go back to the temple and teach. They are brought before the council again. And again Peter speaks. And a Pharisee named Gamaliel counsels caution from within the council itself. They beat the apostles and charge them again not to speak in the name of Jesus. And let them go. And the apostles leave the council rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer dishonor for the name. Rejoicing. Not relieved. Not grateful to have survived. Not chastened by the experience into more careful behavior going forward. Rejoicing. Because suffering for the name is not the same thing as the name failing. Peter knows something about this now. He knows it in the way you know things that have passed through your body rather than just through your mind. In the courtyard, he could not endure the pressure of a servant girl's identification. In front of the council, he can endure the pressure of the full weight of religious authority, demanding silence. He is not the same person. Or perhaps more accurately, he is the same person. With the same Galilean accent and the same impulsiveness and the same forward motion toward whatever is in front of him. But the thing he is moving toward has changed. And the thing that drives the motion is no longer the particular kind of confidence that the courtyard destroyed. He is moving as a witness now, not as someone proving something about himself. That is the difference. Chapter 13. The leader who was still learning. There is a rooftop in Joppa. It is midday. Peter is hungry. He has gone up to the roof to pray while the meal is being prepared below, which is a very ordinary arrangement. A man praying while food is cooked. The domestic rhythm of a household, continuing around the interior life of its guest. He is staying with a man named Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea. And the smell of the sea comes up over the rooftop in the midday air, along with whatever is cooking in the kitchen below. And he falls into a trance. He sees the sky open, and something like a great sheet descending, let down by its four corners to the earth. And in the sheet are all kinds of animals and reptiles and birds. every category of creature, including the ones that the dietary laws of his tradition have always classified as unclean, as outside the boundaries of what a Jewish person is permitted to eat. And a voice says, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Peter says, "By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean." This is reflex, pura reflex. The categories are so deeply embedded in him, so thoroughly part of the structure of how he understands the world and his place in it, and the boundaries that define faithfulness, that the response arrives before he has had time to consider whether it is the right response. The voice says, "What God has made clean, do not call common." This happens 3 times. 3 times the sheet descends. 3 times the voice speaks. 3 times Peter refuses and is corrected. Then the sheet is taken back up into the sky, and Peter is left on the rooftop in the midday sun, greatly puzzled, as the text says, about what the vision might mean. The circumstances arrive almost immediately. Downstairs, while Peter is still puzzling on the roof, there are men at the door. They have been sent by a Roman centurion named Cornelius, who is stationed in Caesarea, a city on the coast about 30 miles to the north. Cornelius is described with specific care by the text, a devout man who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people and prayed continually to God. He is not Jewish. He is a Gentile, a Roman military officer, and God has appeared to him in a vision and told him to send for Peter. The Spirit tells Peter to go with the men without hesitation. Peter goes down and meets them, and the next day he goes with them to Caesarea. When he arrives at the house of Cornelius, there is a crowd waiting. Cornelius falls at his feet to worship him. Peter lifts him up and says, "Stand up. I too am a man." Then Peter speaks to the assembled household, and he begins with something that is, for Peter, a remarkable admission. He says, "You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any person common or unclean. God has shown me. Not I have reasoned my way to this conclusion. Not I have studied the Scriptures and determined that the boundaries are more permeable than I previously understood. God has shown me." The learning did not come from Peter's own theological development or his expanding social imagination. It came from a vision on a rooftop, delivered 3 times because once was not enough, while he was hungry and praying and waiting for his meal. This matters because it tells us something honest about the limits of what Peter could have produced on his own. He is not a systematic theologian working through the implications of a new theological framework. He is a fisherman from Galilee who is being shown, one encounter at a time, one vision at a time, that the story he is living in is larger than the story he started with. He had understood the movement as something for his own people. This was not narrow-mindedness in the pejorative sense. It was the natural shape of his world, the community he came from, and the tradition he was raised in, and the people he had always understood himself to be in relationship with. While he is still speaking, the Spirit falls on everyone in the house. The Jewish believers who came with Peter are astonished, because the gift has been poured out on Gentiles, on people who are outside the boundaries. Peter says, "Can anyone withhold water for baptizing these people, who have received the Holy Spirit just as we have?" He baptizes them. When he returns to Jerusalem, the people there challenge him. They say, "You went to uncircumcised men and ate with them." Peter tells them the whole story. The rooftop, the sheet, the 3 times, the men at the door, the house of Cornelius, the Spirit falling. And when they hear it, they fall silent, and they glorify God and say, "Then to the Gentiles also, God has granted repentance that leads to life." But Peter's learning does not end with Cornelius. Some years later, in Antioch, there is an episode that Paul will later describe in his letter to the Galatians, with a directness that does not spare Peter's feelings or protect his reputation. Paul says when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. What happened in Antioch is this. Peter was eating with Gentile believers, which is itself significant, because it means the lesson of Cornelius has taken root in his practice. He is sharing meals with people across the boundary that once felt absolute. And then certain people arrive from Jerusalem. People who hold a more conservative position on the question of table fellowship with Gentiles and the requirements of the law. And Peter withdraws. He separates himself. He stops eating with the Gentile believers when the people from Jerusalem are present. The other Jewish believers follow his lead. Paul confronts him in front of everyone. He says, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? He is right. Peter is not wrong about what he knows. He knows, from the rooftop and from the house of Cornelius, that God does not show partiality, that the boundaries he grew up with are not the boundaries of the story he is living in. He knows this. He has testified to it. He has been changed by it. But in Antioch, under the pressure of the people from Jerusalem, under the social weight of the conservative community's expectations, something in him retreats. Not all the way back to I do not know the man, not the total erasure of the courtyard, but a step backward, a moment where the fear of what people think moves faster than the commitment to what he knows. This pattern is familiar, the same quality that produced the denial in the courtyard. The way fear can move faster than conviction under sufficient pressure surfaces here in a different form, in a different city, in a different kind of confrontation. But what Antioch reveals that is actually more important than the failure itself is this: Peter can be corrected. He does not need to be the one who is right. He does not need to protect his position or his reputation against the challenge of someone younger and less seasoned in the direct presence of Jesus. The rock is not a monument. It is not a fixed thing, immovable and complete and finished. It is a formation, still being shaped by the forces pressing on it, still being revealed by the chipping away of things that are not finally part of it. The failures reveal the shape as much as the successes do, maybe more, because the failures show where the old patterns are still lodged, where the fear still runs faster than the conviction, where the work of becoming is still incomplete. He is still becoming, years after Pentecost, after Beautiful Gate, after the Council, after Cornelius, after Antioch. Peter is still a man in the middle of a formation that is not finished. And what is coming at the end of the formation is the thing Jesus described on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. In the early morning, with a charcoal fire burning and fish on it and bread, the morning of the 3 questions and the 3 answers and the 3 commissions, he said, when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. Peter is old now. The hands that once pulled nets through cold water are the hands of an old man who has walked from Galilee to Jerusalem, to Caesarea, to Antioch, and finally to Rome, who has been beaten and imprisoned and threatened and corrected, and who has kept going through all of it. And now he is in Rome. Chapter 14. Rome. Rome is not a city Peter was born for. He was born for Bethsaida, for the smell of the lake in the early morning and the weight of wet nets and the sound of water against the hull of a wooden boat, for the particular quality of light that comes off the Sea of Galilee at different hours of the day, the way it changes the color of everything, the way a fisherman learns to read it, the way other people read text, as information, as instruction about what the day will require. Rome is something else entirely. It is the largest city in the world in the 1st century, home to perhaps approaching or exceeding 1 million people by some estimates, a number that staggers the imagination of anyone who has grown up in a village by a lake. It is a city of noise and crowd, and the particular smell of that many human beings and animals in close proximity, of street food and open drains, and the smoke of 1,000 fires, and the stone and marble of the monuments that the empire has built to remind everyone who passes through that this is where the world is administered. It is also the city that crucified Jesus. Not directly, not the Jerusalem branch of the operation, but the same institution, the same chain of command, the same ultimate authority that Pontius Pilate was a local representative of when he handed Jesus over to be crucified. Peter comes to this city. The evidence for this is strong, though it comes in layers of different weight. And honesty requires saying so clearly. The New Testament does not place Peter in Rome directly. The book of Acts follows Paul's journeys in its later chapters and ends with Paul under house arrest in Rome. And Peter is not mentioned in that context. The letters Paul writes from Rome do not name Peter as present. But the first letter of Peter closes with a greeting from she who is in Babylon, a name that Jewish and early Christian writers used with regularity as a coded reference to Rome, the great empire that had become for the first century what Babylon had been for an earlier generation. The dominant foreign power, the city of exile. This reference is widely understood by scholars across traditions as pointing to Rome. And then there is the testimony of the early church itself. Clement of Rome, writing at the end of the 1st century, within living memory of these events, refers to Peter's martyrdom. Ignatius of Antioch, writing in the early 2nd century, speaks to the Roman Church with unusual apostolic reverence, placing Peter and Paul within its founding memory. Irenaeus, writing later in the 2nd century, is explicit. Peter and Paul preached in Rome and founded the church there. These are not late legends. These are writers who are close enough to the events in historical terms that their testimony carries genuine weight, who have access to the living memory of communities that were present for what they are describing. Peter comes to Rome. The tradition is strong and early and consistent. What is less certain, because it comes from a later layer of tradition, is the specific detail of why he stays. The Acts of Peter, a text from the 2nd century and not a New Testament document, belongs to a later layer of tradition and should be held differently than the earliest witnesses. But the question it places in Peter's mouth is real. It describes a moment when the persecution in Rome has become severe enough that the community urges Peter to leave, to preserve himself. And Peter, beginning to leave the city, encounters a vision on the road, out, a figure moving toward the city. Peter asks, "Lord, where are you going?" The figure answers, "I am going to Rome to be crucified again." And Peter turns around. We cannot verify this the way we verify the account of Pentecost or the healing at Beautiful Gate. But the question it imagines Peter asking is the question of someone who is still following, still oriented toward the person rather than the destination, still asking not "where should I go," but "where are you going?" As if the answer to the first question is always contained in the answer to the second. Whatever his exact reasoning, whatever the specific shape of the decision in the actual life of the actual man, Peter stays in Rome. The fisherman from Bethsaida who was born for a lake and a boat stays in the largest, most dangerous, most powerful city in the world, in the city of the empire that killed his Lord, leading a community that the empire has decided is a problem worth addressing through violence. He knows what is coming. He has known for years. Jesus told him on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, in the early morning, with a charcoal fire burning between them, "When you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." The persecution in Rome intensifies after the great fire of the city. In the 64th year of the 1st century, the Emperor Nero, looking for someone to blame, identifies the Christian community as a convenient target. What follows is one of the earliest and most brutal documented persecutions of Christians in Rome. People are killed in ways designed to be spectacular and public, and to serve as entertainment as well as warning. Peter is in this city during this time. He is an old man with a Galilean accent in a city where that accent marks him as foreign, leading a community that is being hunted. Carrying the name of a man that the empire has officially decided is a threat to public order. He has every practical reason to be somewhere else. He stays. Think about what that means in the context of the whole story. The man who once followed Jesus at a distance in the dark, who once stood at a fire and said, "I do not know the man," who once began to sink in the water when the wind was strong. That man is in Rome in the 64th year of the 1st century, in the middle of a persecution, choosing to remain, not because the fear is gone. The text does not tell us the fear is gone. The tradition does not claim he became someone incapable of fear. He is the same person. The person who fell at Jesus' knees in the boat and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." The person who slept in the garden when he was asked to stay awake. The person who swore at the fire and wept bitterly in the street. That person is in Rome. And he stays because of something the long years of following have built in him that was not there when he first pulled the boat up on the shore and walked away from his nets. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of something that does not require the fear to be absent before it can act. Something that has been formed through the transfiguration and the garden and the courtyard and Saturday and the tomb and the shore and the charcoal fire and Pentecost and beautiful gate and the council and Cornelius and Antioch. Through all of it, shaped by each of those moments into a quality that has no good short word in English. Fidelity. Maybe. The kind that has been tested in the actual conditions of actual failure and has not finally given way. He said at the table, all those years ago, in an upper room in Jerusalem, that he was ready to go with Jesus to prison and to death. He was sincere when he said it. He just did not know yet what it would cost, or what kind of strength it would require, or what he would have to lose before he found the kind of strength the promise needed. Now he knows. He is in Rome. And what is waiting for him in Rome is the thing that has been waiting at the end of the story since Jesus described it on the shore. Since the prediction was made that someone else would carry him where he does not want to go, he does not want to go there. That is part of what the prediction told him, and part of what staying in Rome means. That he is walking towards something he does not want and staying anyway. The shore is very far away. The lake is very far away. The boat and the nets and the morning of the empty catch and the stranger who told him to put out into the deep water are very far away. But the name given on that shore has followed him all the way here. Rock. He is about to find out, in the most final and irreversible way available, what that name actually weighs. Chapter 15. The Upside-Down Cross. They come for him. We do not know the exact moment. We do not know the street or the hour, or the particular sequence of events that leads from Peter in Rome to Peter in Roman custody awaiting execution. The historical record does not preserve those details. What it preserves is the fact of it. The end point. The thing that the early tradition remembers with a consistency that speaks to its reality even where the specific details are uncertain. He is arrested. He is condemned. He is going to die. And according to the memory of the early church, when they tell him how he will die, he makes a request. He asks to be crucified upside down, head toward the earth, feet in the air, the most uncomfortable version of an already agonizing death. Chosen, deliberately. For a reason, he states clearly. He is not worthy, he says, to die in the same manner as his Lord. They grant it. And so the fisherman from Bethsaida, the man whose name was Simeon before it was Peter, whose hands were shaped by nets before they were shaped by anything else, dies inverted on a cross in the city of his Lord's killers, having asked for the specific indignity of it, having made the request with the calm of someone who knows exactly what they are asking for and why. Now we have to stay here. We cannot move past this too quickly toward the significance of it, the meaning of it, the theological weight that later generations will attach to it. We have to stay with the fact of what this moment actually is, in the life of the actual man, before it becomes symbol or doctrine or the founding image of an institution. This is a man being executed, an old man, far from the lake where he was born, in a city whose language he learned late and whose rhythms he never fully absorbed, dying by a method designed by the empire to be maximally painful and publicly humiliating. This is not abstract. This is not ceremonial. This is a body under unbearable physical stress. A person passing through the worst thing a person can pass through. In a foreign city, without the comfort of familiar ground beneath him. And he asked for this. Not the execution. He did not choose the execution, did not seek martyrdom as an end in itself. But when the execution was coming regardless, when the end was already determined and the only question was the form it would take, he asked for the specific form that made it harder. He asked to be made more uncomfortable, more degraded, more obviously a figure of humiliation and not of triumph, because he is not worthy to die as his Lord died. This is the sentence that has to be understood in the full context of the man saying it. Peter has been called Rock. He heard the name first by a letter before he understood it. He heard it again at Caesarea Philippi, paired in the same conversation with Get Behind Me. Satan. He has carried the name for decades. Through everything the decades contained. Through the garden and the courtyard and Saturday and the tomb and the charcoal fire on the shore and Pentecost and Beautiful Gate and Cornelius and Antioch and Rome. He knows now what the name weighs. Not because he has become someone invulnerable to failure or incapable of fear or elevated above the ordinary conditions of being human. He is still the person who fell at Jesus' knees in the boat. He is still the person who slept in the garden. He is still the person who stood at the fire and said, I do not know the man. He is still the person who stepped back from the Gentile table in Antioch when the pressure came from the people he was afraid of, disappointing. He is that person. And he is also the person who is asking to be crucified upside down. Not as a performance of humility, but as the honest statement of a man who has spent enough time in the actual presence of what Jesus was and what Jesus did, that he knows, with the particular certainty that comes from long acquaintance, that he is not that. He is not Jesus. He was never supposed to be. He was supposed to be Peter, Rock, the fisherman from Galilee who left his nets and followed and failed and was found and was restored, and kept going, and kept going, and kept going, until there was no more going to do except this. The upside-down cross is not humility as performance. It is accuracy. It is the statement of a man who has learned the difference between himself and the one he has been following for his entire adult life, who has had that difference demonstrated to him repeatedly and painfully, and has never stopped following despite it. Now think about what is on the other side of the courtyard in this. The courtyard, Peter standing at a fire, afraid, saying, I do not know the man to a servant girl, denying the name, erasing the connection, making himself anonymous in the crowd around the fire because the identification felt too dangerous to sustain. This Peter asking to be identified, permanently and publicly and in the most visible way available, as someone who followed Jesus, not asking for glory in it, asking for the particular form of identification that is most degrading, that makes the following most obvious and the self-promotion least possible. Both things are Peter. The courtyard and the cross are not two different people. They are the same person at different points in a formation that was always heading somewhere, always being shaped towards something, even when the shaping felt like destruction. Even when the Saturday of it seemed like the end rather than the middle. He was called Rock before he knew what kind of strength a rock required. Now, at the end, on an upside-down cross, in the capital of an empire that had never heard his name until recently, he knew, not because he had become someone else, but because he had finally, fully, become the person Jesus had seen when he looked at a fisherman by a lake and said, You will be called Cephas. The future had arrived. It looked like this. There is a letter. It was written by an old man to people he had never met, scattered across a region he knew mostly by reputation and report. People living in Pontus and Galatia and Cappadocia and Asia and Bithynia, which are the names of provinces in what we would now call northern and western Turkey. People living far from Jerusalem and far from Rome and far from the lake where the story began. People who were, in the language the letter uses to describe them, exiles and strangers. People without a settled place in the world they were living in. People for whom the ordinary structures of belonging and security had become unreliable or unavailable. The letter is addressed to them, to the scattered, to the ones living in the difficult in-between. Peter knew something about that. He was born in a region where the boundaries between Jewish tradition and Greek influence and Roman occupation were blurrier than they were in Jerusalem, where belonging was always a more complicated question than it was for people at the center of things. He left that world for a movement that put him permanently outside the comfortable categories of his society, permanently identified with something that the established authorities had decided was dangerous. He spent his adult life as a stranger in various senses of the word, always carrying something that the place he was in did not fully accommodate. He writes to the scattered from that knowledge, not from a position of having solved the problem of exile and strangeness, not from the other side of the difficulty looking back at it with the comfortable distance of resolution. From inside it, from Rome, from the city of the empire that has been making life dangerous for people like him and like the people he is writing to. He says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." The word beloved. It is the word of someone who knows the people he is addressing in the way you know, people you have worried about and prayed for and wanted to reach. Not a formal greeting, not the opening salutation of an institutional document. Beloved, you who I care about, you who matter to me, you who I am writing to, because what happens to you matters. And then there is the sentence the letter is most remembered for. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Cast all your anxiety on him. The word cast is a throwing word. It is the same word used for throwing a net, for casting something outward with force and intention, for the deliberate act of putting something that is in your hands into a different location. Not set down your anxiety carefully, not manage your anxiety responsibly. Cast it, throw it, put it somewhere other than where you have been carrying it, with the same kind of committed motion that a fisherman uses when he sends the net out over the water. Peter knows about throwing nets. He also knows about anxiety. He knows it from the inside, in the specific way that you know things that have lived in your body rather than just your mind. He knows the anxiety of the man who said, "I am ready to go with you to prison and to death," and then discovered in the courtyard what his readiness actually amounted to when the pressure was real. He knows the anxiety of Saturday, the long day with nothing to do and nothing to reach for, and only the weight of the previous night to sit inside. He knows the anxiety of the charcoal fire on the shore, of standing in the smell of his own worst night and hearing his name asked 3 times. He has carried a great deal of anxiety across the decades of his life, and he says, cast it, throw it, because he cares for you. Because he cares for you, not because you have managed it well enough to deserve relief, not because the anxiety is proportionate or understandable or justified by the circumstances, because he cares. The caring is the reason, and the caring is not conditional on anything the anxious person has done or not done, or understood, or failed to understand. Peter knows something about that kind of caring too. He knows it from the shore of the Sea of Galilee, in the early morning, with a charcoal fire and fish on it, and 3 questions that undid 3 denials, not by erasing them, but by going through them, by meeting him in the place where he actually was, rather than the place where he thought he should be. He knows it from 2 words in a message at an empty tomb. And Peter, words that said his name, in the moment he most needed his name to be said, and least expected anyone to say it. He knows what it is to be cared for by someone who knows exactly what you are, and has seen exactly what you did, and says your name anyway. So when he writes, cast all your anxiety on him, Because he cares for you. He is not writing from a position of theory. He is writing from the position of a man who has tested this statement against the actual conditions of his actual life and found it to hold. The letter reaches people he has never met, in places he has never been, in languages he never learned. It travels the roads the empire built, along the trade routes the empire opened, carried by people the empire would not have considered worth tracking. It arrives in rooms where small groups of people gather, in the particular quiet of those who know the meeting carries a risk, and someone reads it aloud. And the word beloved lands in the room before anything else does. Beloved. Written by a fisherman. To strangers. In the middle of a persecution, he left the nets on the shore of a lake in Galilee. He never stopped belonging to that shore. And what he carried from it: calloused hands, a fisherman's instinct to cast, and the particular stubbornness of someone who has seen the nets fill and knows what fills them. Outlasted the empire that killed him. The letter is still being read. The name is still being said.